Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 9 of How to Do Psychedelics. Today, my guest is Rahul Panchal, and he has been oil painting since age 7, started working in the advertising industry at 22. By age 33, he was leading creative developments on Super Bowl campaigns. He's lived with the Huni, Kuin, and Ashaninka people in the Amazon, and nowadays Rahul does design work during the week at claritydecoded.com, and on the weekends he hosts healing events with thepurewhitelight.com. Rahul, welcome to the show. So good to see you again. So much to catch up on. Anything you want to share before we dive in?
Well, just thanks for having me. It's awesome seeing you. It's like it feels like it has been years since I saw you. The last time we were hanging out, we were in the Amazon jungle together.
That's right, man. It feels like a lifetime or two ago. So to kick things off, as I like to do here, I like to ask my guests to share the most pivotal, meaningful, or significant experience with psychedelics that they chose to do that largely shaped the person that we have in front of us today.
Yeah. So for me, the biggest one is the first time I ever tried ayahuasca. I It was 2015. I was in the middle of managing a big Pepsi campaign for the Super Bowl, and a buddy of mine invited me to come down to Miami um, and attend a ceremony. I didn't know I didn't know what ayahuasca was. I didn't know what a ceremony was. All I knew was that I needed to bring an all white outfit. And I'd had a call with the shaman earlier that week, but I was so busy with work I barely even listened to the call. I was on mute for most of the call and just um, unmuted every once in a while and said, "Yeah, yeah, sounds good, all good." And then I just go back on mute while she talked for a long time about lots of important things that I wish I'd listened to. But I showed up. I showed up to the ceremony with just the attitude of if I go with the flow, it's going to be fine. And I had done mushrooms once in college, so I thought it was going to be something like that. Just like maybe get a little teary, maybe laugh a little bit. I wasn't thinking it was going to be an absolute mind, body, soul reorienting experience. But
Why'd you choose to do it? Like, what was your yes at that time?
I'm pretty open. I'm pretty gung ho on things. Um, Most of my friends who've known me for a few years, they have a lot of stories of me doing crazy stuff. Like, I don't know, like one day I decided spearfishing was a good idea, so I went and bought all the gear and started swimming with sharks and spearfishing. And I don't know,
A general sense of adventure and open-mindedness.
yeah, yeah. I one day I was hanging out with a friend and we wanted to go skydiving. So I was like, okay, let's go. And I told the skydiving instructor I wanted to jump out of the plane by myself as quick as possible. So they put me on track for that. And then I came back a few more weekends and took the testing and did all the stuff. And then I was jumping out of the plane by myself. I don't know. I have a very open and adventurous spirit. And going to a ceremony didn't seem like a big deal. But I was
Just like
also
another adventure, basically.
yeah, it was something cool to try, like, okay, sweet. Um, but at the time I was fruitarian. I had been eating only fruit for 2 years when that came across my plate. Yeah, yeah, my body was super, super clear. Eating only fruit is pretty amazing, but I didn't realize, or I don't think anyone realized it was a contraindication. I didn't learn about it till years later that being fruitarian and for that long and going into a psychedelic experience like this was lethal. So in the ceremony, I dropped dead, and the ceremony was great, but the other side was um, profound. Like being able to leave time, being able to leave your body, being able to, like I was going on like spaceships and interacting with people on my spirit team. I was I went through like every strand of my DNA, through my human life, through my parents' contributions, through my grandparents, great grandparents, and I found like generational traumas that were in there. And then I
And
went.
this was all before your death experience.
No, this was once I was dead. Once I
Okay.
was dead, it was like the ceremony was what, 10 hours or something, but the death experience was like a trillion years.
So when did you get like the idea, like the knowing that, oh, like I'm dead?
So I was trying to go to the bathroom. I got up because there was like some shooting pain in my abdomen. So I got up to go to the bathroom, and standing up was not easy. And it was in a very silent part of the ceremony. So I stood up and I go, whoa. And then I started like hobbling to the bathroom, and I didn't make it. I collapsed, and someone caught me. This woman caught me, and I'm looking up at her face, and her hands are holding my back up, and she looks into my eyes and she says, "You can surrender. I got you." And I'm like, okay. And then I just felt this surge of pain start shooting up my body. And the next thing you know, I'm like lifting out of my body and starting to float above earth, and like seeing Florida and Miami kind of drifting away. And I start going up into space. And I'm just like thinking, holy shit, did I just leave my body?
Mm.
And so I kind of tuned back into my body, and I was like projectile vomiting, and I could feel diarrhea running down my legs while this person's still holding me. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. I went back to floating above the earth.
So you chose to stay there for a little while.
Just a split second. Yeah. So it was pretty clear I was like out of my body. And then once I was out of my body, I was like, oh, whoa, I'm unbound from my body. And I just started asking questions and just started getting answers immediately.
I mean, that's very different than the common experiences people notice with ayahuasca, which is more, the general visionary tapestry of the rainbow serpent, grandmother ayahuasca, spirits, and the general kind of like jungle-like visions. Yeah, that's very clear that you were having a uniquely out-of-body experience.
Yeah. I mean, I had that kind of, I had the, I guess, more standard stuff for the beginning part of the ceremony. So as soon as I got into the room, I wanted to sit next to the houseplant. So I got the spot next to the big houseplant. And first cup, I heard this like, this like dry throat to my left. But the only thing to my left was the houseplant. I was at the very end of the circle. And so I looked at the houseplant, and I could see he needed water.
Wow.
So I dumped out my whole water bottle into his little pot, and he goes, thank you. And he's like, my name is Emilius Maximilius Babilius, and I'm an ambassador from the Amazon jungle, and I'm here to tell you all about the story of plants and humans. And so for an hour, he told me everything about plants and humans, and how we are essentially plants with our roots unbound from the earth so that we can spread seeds further. And I mean, he was explaining to me that like most of our DNA is from bananas, and I Googled it after the ceremony. If you Google it, our DNA is 60% banana. Like, this tree was telling the truth.
So much for the monkeys. I mean, they're related in some way.
Yeah, but he was also telling me that there was some like ancient plant that like it became essentially the banana tree. But it had, you know how like in the jungle they would throw all the food scraps onto the banana trees, and the banana trees would eat them?
Yeah.
It's because the roots of banana trees are similar to worms. Like, they have mouths, and they like bring the nutrients back to the banana tree. And that eventually evolved into worms. And then we're the descendants of worms because we have a mouth hole and a butthole and that digestive tube in between. And that's where we get it from.
Except we're not asexual. Hermaphroditic.
Yeah, not anymore. I mean, obviously we've evolved, but we still have the, the fundamental hardware.
I'm just like looking at my banana tree right now and want to hang out with it later all of a sudden.
Yeah. Yeah, so there was a lot. I mean, the ceremony was absolutely mind-blowing. Talking to a tree for a long time was super cool. And then the next cup, I just rolled up into a ball and cried for an hour about, using fossil fuels and using plastics and just every kind of Western human guilt you could have for like destroying the planet. Like I was real like upset about all that kind of stuff going into the ceremony. And I just felt grandmother hold me and pet my hair and say, "Don't worry, baby, it's okay." Like literally every single thing I was upset about, I was like, "I'm sorry for using fossil fuels," and she's like, "Don't worry, baby, I love it when you guys pull the oil from my skin."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay." So it just soothed all of this tension that was in my body.
And had you had experiences like that before, like connecting to plants and feeling deeply attuned to the pain of the world?
I I mean, yeah, but not on that level. I mean,
Right.
my house was full of houseplants. I'm really good with plants. I had like a intuition with plants. Like I never had like a watering schedule or anything like that. The plant would tell me it
Mm.
needed water and I'd water it.
Mhm.
And then the whole like before the ceremony, I'd literally started an Instagram account called Truth News, and it was like all about like the truth behind things we were doing to destroy the planet, but also the truth behind like how beautiful the planet is and like cool animals and cool nature places. And so it was something I was real up on at that time. But yeah, she the spirit just said, relax. And then I was in this big uh thing where I was like, "Hey, I want to like make pollution and all that stuff go away. What can I do?" And she literally told me, she's like, "Don't worry about it. That's not your karma. Other people are working on that stuff, but you're here for other reasons."
Did
So
you
like,
learn what those things were?
I think it's just to be happy.
Honestly, that makes sense, man. When I first met you in the Amazon, I'm like, this dude's just radiating joy the whole time.
I think that's my number one job.
Nice, nice, nice. What you said about already having an existing connection to plants, like an intuition there, and being tuned into the affairs of the world and feeling a tie to that. I've seen many, many different kinds of intakes over the years, and they largely focus on like, what do you know about your trauma and like your background and your experience with medicine? And I'm hoping that they also turn their eye towards, these kinds of things. Like, what kind of development have you made with your psyche? Like, what's your relationship to energy? Like,
Mhm.
how are you feeling with what's going on in the world? Because this stuff is just as important as what we can approach and understand psychologically.
Well, I think everything that's going on in the world is a physical manifestation and reflection of what's going on in our collective psyche,
Hmm.
right? So
Agreed.
that's why being happy is so important, because when we're happy and enjoying nature, like literally Mother Earth just told me to enjoy nature. She's like, just go outside and play, just enjoy me.
Enjoy me.
She says, don't be so upset about all this, just enjoy me. Because I think when we're happy and we're enjoying nature, why would we destroy it? Like how many times are you out on a hike and you see trash and you're like, oh, and you pick it up, and that's
Hmm.
that's that's the end of that. But
Yeah,
like if you're really enjoying nature, you're not going to destroy it.
that's true.
And as a collective, it's still pretty weird to go hiking and go camping. Like think about how many people. I I mean, I love camping. It's impossible to get people to go. You know, Imagine if everyone went camping, or imagine if like,
We all moved to the jungle or the forest.
yeah, I mean, or at least just visited. Like I've offered to take so many people to the Amazon, and they're just like, hell no.
And it's very different there to be with medicine than to be in spaces, in Western environments. We'll get
Yeah.
to that in a bit. I want to circle back to the death experience. So you're coming out of your body, you're noticing you're leaving your body, you made a choice to stay there for a bit, you were receiving a lot of information about your DNA, your ancestry. What came after that?
Well, then after I got through my ancestors, it started going into the animals, and I started seeing how the coral reefs had created my bone cells, and jellyfish had created my intestinal cells, and those like red bacteria things had created my blood cells. Like red rocks
In Sedona?
anywhere, red
Or
rocks
just in general?
Sedona, red rocks amphitheater.
Yeah.
That the red that's in the rocks is a dead bacteria that's like you know petrified into the stone. But it's the bacteria that basically took all of the CO2 out of the air and put all the oxygen into the air. So our blood cells are the descendants of these bacteria. That's why hemoglobin's red,
Mm.
and that's why these red rock areas are so sacred, because these rocks are just like packed with ancient ancestral life.
Well, that might explain why my experience at the Red Rock seeing Heilung was so important and powerful. Not that they're not powerful in their own right, but that they would choose that space. Now I get it even more deeply.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What else? Then yeah, just went all the way down to, like, I remembered being like just my DNA just bubbling out of some mud, like it was interesting. It was a real like education on like my body's connection to the earth, because there was also this element of my spirit, being this like angelic, like there was a moment, when you're dead, you're not physical, so you're not bound by like one moment. But there were also moments where I was on a spaceship and I was like walking around this spaceship. It was cool. It was like the Starship Enterprise kind of thing, like super clean and white, and everyone in their little uniforms, very busy with their tasks. And I was walking around this spaceship and I was like, oh man, I think I'm the captain of the spaceship or something. And people were like, give me little salutes or whatever. And I was just standing on, like at the main window, like looking out over space. It was cool, man.
This brings up like a curiosity that's been bubbling since you mentioned all this connection like to the earth and how in so many ways we're made from these elements. And I often have these discussions around like, well, are we really from this planet or not? And what I always bring it down to is if we're from this planet, why is it we seem like we're this single organism that can do so much harm to it, that can seem so out of harmony with it? And now you mentioned being with aliens too. And yeah, I'm curious if you got any information around that, like as far as
Yeah. Yeah.
descendants.
I mean, our body is from Earth. Like our body is literally a spacesuit made out of Earth stuff. And then we have this other side that's, I mean, it, my, so when I came back to, when I came back, um,
You chose to, right? It
well,
was
let me get into that. So
yeah, yeah.
once I went through all of my DNA, which took just a million lifetimes. After that, I just saw my daughter's two glowing faces. Like it almost looked like a Star Wars kind of thing, like that blue message from Yoda kind of thing or whatever. And I saw their two glowing faces, and I was like, oh, it's my kids. Because at this point, I'm so far out. Like I didn't even remember this lifetime. It'd been eons since I even thought about, having this name, being Rahul, and all that kind of stuff. And then I saw my daughter's two glowing faces, and they were just hovering there like a choice. Like, hey, you do have this thing you could go back for, or we can keep going down this like eternal rabbit hole of mysteries and wonders. And I said, you know what? I think it's time to go back to my body. And I tuned into my body, and it was ice cold.
Hmm.
It was the first time in eons that I felt the sensation of cold. And I was like, whoa. So I don't know how I knew how to do this, but I just like, manifested a sun and then plugged it into my body and then like flipped all these switches and relit and reanimated my nervous system. And then just as easy as putting on a t-shirt, I just slid back into my body and I could feel the flesh like encapsulate me. It felt like, I don't know, felt like almost like putting on like a skin tight suit made out of hot dog. It was just like I felt the flesh suit come on, and I felt that sun that I manifested. I felt that start to heat up my body, and I felt the chill kind of leave. And then I became aware that there was someone holding me. There was someone spooning me while I was out. And then I could hear the shaman and one of the guardians of the ceremony saying, hey, we're kind of worried. He's been down there for a while. And so I was like, hey, I'm back. Don't worry.
Did they have any sense that you were literally dead for a while?
Some people did, some people didn't.
Hmm.
I spoke to a lot of the people who were there about what they perceived, and because I was curious too. I was like, did I die?
You're ice cold and someone's holding you, or that could be an indicator.
The people that were like actually holding me, there were 3 different women that took turns just being with me. They all said they were pretty sure I was dead. The person who was leading the ceremony, she said, you didn't die. You didn't die. You're fine. And then the guy that helped me get into the shower and all that kind of stuff, he told me, he was like, he literally said, you were just cold meat on the floor.
Yeah.
So after that, this guy came up and he said, hey, are you going to be able to shower, or do I need to help you? And I said, I think I can do it. And so I stood up, and it was very weird to stand up. And then I got to the bathroom, and I had no idea how to use I had no idea how to make water come out of this contraption. And so I asked someone for help, and then they actually had a hard time too, so that made me feel better. Like it made me not think I wasn't like completely out of my mind, because it was some kind of like fancy schmancy shower.
Like you didn't forget everything about being human.
Yeah.
You're still high.
I don't know. It didn't feel like that. It just felt like my brain had been super turned off, and it just like, when you turn on a computer that hasn't been turned off in a while, it like runs better and stuff, but like none of the programs are open, so you have to open all the programs again. It was like that. They were just like, the shower program wasn't open. So when I got in the shower, I was covered in body fluids, and I got out of the shower. Well, first I got into the shower and I just saw all the products everywhere. I had no idea what to do with any of them. So I just squirted something on my, like conditioner or something on my chest, and rubbed it in, and then got out of the shower, wrapped the towel around me, and the towel stuck to my backside. And I was like, ugh. And so one of the guardians was in the bathroom with me, just watching me fumble around like this. And I was like, hey, I messed up. I'm not clean at all. Like, my towel stuck. And I pulled the towel off, and it was all black. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to get you another towel, get in there, try again, and this time scrub. And she's like, use the soap. I'm like, oh, right. So yeah, my second shower was successful. Then I came out, re-entered the ceremony. They were all singing hymns and stuff. And then they closed the ceremony, and busted out all the food, and it was really nice, but I had forgotten how to eat. I had no idea what to do with food. Like, clueless. So I just sat there and stared at the food for a while until there's like an old man. He was watching me, and he said, eat something. It'll help you ground. And I said, what's grounding? I was like, I have no idea. And then he's like, well, you put the food in your mouth and you'll feel better. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm looking at all the food, and I'm like, what about this pineapple? Because keep in mind, I'm fruitarian. The only thing I remember is eating fruit.
Oh, uh-huh.
And he's like, why don't you try this cooked sweet potato? And I hadn't eaten a cooked sweet potato in 2 years. So I'm like, I don't know, man.
Did you remember you were fruitarian?
The only stuff on the table that made sense to put into my mouth was the fruit.
Okay.
But
So
my
something
body
remember.
but my body did not want any of the fruit. Because it's, you know, it's not the right thing to eat after you went through what I just went through.
Also, funny enough, like I know that pineapple can actually intensify ayahuasca.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never heard that. But
Yeah. I found that out in a recent ceremony with a friend of mine who's notoriously like not hard, but like has a hard time going deep. And this shaman's like, oh, you have some pineapple in the fridge, go eat that. And he had his first purge ever with ayahuasca almost immediately. And it was like this down for hours. I was like, wow,
wow.
that was effective.
Yeah. Well, for 2 years before my first ceremony, I was having at least one pineapple a day.
I
And
wonder.
the day of the ceremony, I had half a watermelon in the morning, and that was it.
So you had pineapple in your body in general. You're
Yeah.
part
Yeah.
pineapple. You were primed.
I was eating about 20 bananas a day.
Dang. So, did you learn anything particularly about this contraindication, what it is about being fruitarian that disposes one to such an experience?
Yeah. So basically, like, before ceremony, they tell you to stop eating so much meat and oils and salts and all that kind of stuff. So your nerves, everyone's nerves, are wrapped in a layer of oil. It's called a myelin sheath.
Mm-hmm.
And the same way wires have like a rubber coating around them, that's what keeps the electricity flowing in the right direction. Your nerves have the same thing, except it's made out of fat. So fruit has very little fat in it. Like even pineapple has some fat in it, but it's minuscule compared to olive oil or meat or any of those kind of things. So eating only fruit, your body gets into a very how do I put this? Your nervous system opens up a lot because the oil coating around your nerves thins out. So you get pretty ungrounded, and it's a lot easier to meditate. It's a lot easier to just close your eyes and see like light. But yeah, having all of the nerves in your body that open, the medicine doesn't have to do anything to get to your nervous system, and it just goes right in there and shorts it out.
So it sounds like from what you're saying, it made you far more open to the medicine and a more powerful experience. It wasn't a contraindication, perhaps of a sort that was like physiologically deadly. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know, man. It's not like a contraindication that I've heard of a bunch, but one of the reasons I went and stayed with different tribes is because I wanted to see how they did things, because it was a very profound experience, and I wanted to learn more about it. And I just, books were only taking me so far. I had to go experience some of these things, and somewhere along the way, I don't remember who said it to me or what, but somebody told me they had heard about someone fruitarian dying in a ceremony.
Well, going back to what you said, this massive literal physical purge you experience right before leaving your body, then ending up ice cold. Yeah, that does kind of indicate a physical death.
Well, and also, the 2-year process of being fruitarian is a fast, and it's a huge purge. Like a lot of stuff comes out of you.
Hmm.
So I was surprised anything came out, and the things I was purging in the ceremony were very metallic.
Hmm.
I'd never since then I've never had a ceremony like that, but like the stuff that was coming out tasted like metal, felt like metal. It was very there were shards to it. I don't know how to.
Yeah. But what I was getting at is like literally when someone dies, and this is where the term shits the bed come from. It's like you release. So, but yeah, interesting to note what you released because yeah, not much to let go of
Mhm.
physically. Huh.
Yeah, and it wasn't uh I mean, it wasn't like poop that came out. It was like black tar, black metallic tar. Yeah, it was some weird stuff.
Yeah, it makes me think of like maybe heavy metals, but I imagine after 2 years of that, you're pretty light even on that.
Yeah, I don't know. It was pretty fascinating.
Well, what more did you learn in your time with Huni and Ashaninka about this?
Well, I was really fascinated at the Huni Queen because you know, the 5-day boat ride to the village, they were feeding us just rice and beans basically. I think that was to get us ready for the ceremony, for the medicine. And then I think about the third or fourth night of ceremony, this Hindu cow came to me. It had all these jewels on and everything. And it was just pumping its udders, like with its hooves. It was like holding its udders and pumping its udders. And it was saying, "You need butter." And then like it like fractaled out into millions of Hindu cows. And then my whole vision filled up with milk. And the next day at breakfast, there was a massive bucket of butter. Do you remember that day they gave us like popcorn and butter for breakfast?
Oh, we're back at the Huni now.
Yeah.
I, God, I forgot that, but now that you're mentioning it, like something is lighting up. It makes sense.
So the night of the ceremony, before they gave us butter, I'm seeing this Hindu cow saying, "I need butter." And I'm receiving that like my nervous system needs butter. Like I need basically coding for my wiring. And the next day when I saw the butter on the table, because there'd never been butter on the
Right.
table before that. I was just laughing my brains out because I was like, "Oh my god, how is this working? Did one of the pages see the same Hindu cow and know that it's butter day?" So I didn't know what it was. It made me realize that we need butter. Like if you're gonna be doing this much,
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing like a lot of ayahuasca every night. I was doing three,
It
four
makes me
cups
wonder,
every night.
like if they chose that on purpose, like okay, it's been this many nights of doing the work. It's time to like give them a bit of armor to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And then a few days after that, do you remember they killed a cow and we had steak and stuff?
Yes, I remember that.
That was a few days after the butter day.
Okay.
So, in the West, you're always told, okay, no meat, no oil with ceremony, but you're just doing it for one weekend, usually,
Yeah,
2, 3 days tops. In the jungle, we're going like what, 12, 15 days in a row
a lot
straight.
of medicine, 2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not just ayahuasca, it's also kambo and sananga and hape, and
Hey,
there's so much stuff just cleaning you out. So you need those fortifying foods.
this is a really good point. Yeah. Bringing to light this understanding of the myelin sheath and how it helps us receive the energy. And yeah, most Westerners could probably do with thinning that barrier a bit before going in for one or two ceremonies. But what we did was very different.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're eating like McDonald's every day going into a ceremony, the medicine's going to have a hard time getting to where it needs to go. I did take a friend to a ceremony once, and he he wanted to do it his way, and I told him the diet and all the stuff, and he decided he wanted to eat McDonald's every day before the ceremony.
He
On
actually did that.
He actually did it. And on the way to the ceremony, he stopped at McDonald's and got enough. I'm sitting in the car with him, and he's like, "Let's get McDonald's." And I'm like, "No, I'm absolutely not going to eat McDonald's before going to the ceremony." And he got enough food for both of us and ate all of it because I wouldn't touch it. And he was sitting right next to me in the ceremony. At the beginning of the ceremony, I closed my eyes to meditate. At the end of the ceremony, I opened my eyes from the deepest meditation of my life. And I was aware that he spent most of the ceremony in the toilet, just working through all that McDonald's. So,
What a waste.
I mean, yeah, I don't know.
You learned something, but yeah, it could have been in many ways more meaningful without.
Yeah. Yeah, the facilitator at that ceremony is like, "Why didn't you tell your friend not to eat McDonald's before the ceremony? We were like holding him over the toilet the whole night." And I was like, I did tell him. He
You
didn't
tried.
listen.
So, to the best of your ability, how would you describe who you were after that rebirth experience, after choosing to come back to this life? Did you notice anything different after you pieced back together? Like, totally different person, or
Well, a few days after the ceremony, I got handed car keys and I didn't know how to drive. I sat in the driver's seat. I had the keys in my left hand. I had my phone in my right hand. And I just sat there for a good 5 minutes, just no idea what to do.
those experiences, like, did you experience fear or just like equanimity, figuring it out?
Yeah, just, okay, I'm sitting here. I don't know what to do. I used to know how to do this, so I'm just going to remember. So I just sat there for 5 minutes and was like, all right, time to remember. And then I remembered.
And so I imagine you had many experiences like that, of remembering things.
Tons. Also, at the time I was married and had 2 kids, and being married is a much more advanced skill set than driving. And I was completely rebooted. So when I got home, I was just playing with my little daughters, like just playing with them. Like I was like their little brother. I was brand new, newborn, and they were my older 3 and 5-year-old, big sisters kind of. And
So there's a sense of like childlikeness and like newness
yeah,
in your adult body with all of these programs that you have cultivated from that, let's just say your prior life, that, coming back on, but there's like this novelty for life.
yeah. Oh my God, that was like probably the funnest time of life ever. But my wife at the time was absolutely horrified.
Mm.
Like I had no sex drive or anything like that, and that was a big change for her. My taste in music changed completely. I used to listen to like drum and bass and metal and stuff like that. I was just listening to ceremony music. Um, I was getting up before sunrise every day and driving to the top of the hill by our house and watching the sunrise. I was taking the kids with me and just like literally crying looking at the sun, just every morning, just being like, wow, this is so amazing.
So
But
when these desires to do these new things came, was it just a clear yes, like, this is what I'm doing now? This is who I
yeah,
am.
yeah. It just was like, there was no, it wasn't even a choice. It was just kind of like, this is who I am. I'm like, why would I listen to drum and bass and death metal? I have nothing of that frequency even interesting. And it's interesting now because in my healing events, I do play metal. Like usually one of the first songs I'll play like a metal song because it
Makes sense.
helps people get into that. There's like those frequencies, those deep rooted anger and things like that are in our systems. And
Helpful
then,
to start there. Get out of the way.
well, it's like when you're done eating pasta and you get the bread to mop up all the sauce.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like metal is a great sponge. It really connects you to that energy, so you can mop it up and then kind of like release it. So
Totally. Totally makes sense. I mean, this is also why many people that are in the side trance scene, which I'd never gotten into, but after years of being curious about it, they explain like it's just this hard, rhythmic, progressive beat that just breaks you down and like opens you up to the thing that needs to go.
Mm. Yeah, I get that. I get that. Yeah, I find metal, just the frequency of it, very grounding, but it's just not my go-to anymore. But I appreciate it. It's a fantastic tool.
Really, I mean, all the music has its place for sure. I'm just consistently in awe of how well you navigated this coming back to yourself. Like all these new habits coming in and recapitulating your relationship with old ways and there being no fear about it. That's what I find most fascinating. And I'm imagining that
I mean,
made, you know, the quote unquote integration possible. And I'm also curious, did you have support in integrating this or was it all
I
you?
I had the opposite of support. So my wife asked for a divorce 6 months into this.
Oh shit.
So I was still super raw and still buzzing. And yeah, so she wanted a divorce, and so that was very difficult. Um, but I also, like I had my I did have support. I had my best friend was always there for me, like the guy that took me to the ceremony.
Okay, so someone who gets the work and like what can happen afterwards, how to show up for someone.
Yeah. And then also a lot of people from the ceremony I stayed in touch with, and you know, yeah, I guess I did have support. I didn't have support from my wife, but I had support from my friends.
Mm.
So, yeah. But
And
I
how long
also,
is that process?
I mean, it's still going on. I'm still, I mean, I'm still dealing with like court stuff with my ex. I mean,
Well, I mean, the coming back to yourself, are you still turning on programs and like
yeah,
finding, oh,
yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. I had dinner with an old middle school friend recently, a couple weeks ago, and we were just catching up. I've known him super long time, and he was telling me about his memories visiting me in New York City when him and his wife would come visit New York City, and they'd come to our apartment. He described to me my apartment, so it was, it was clear that he had been to my apartment because it was a unique place, and he knew what it looked like. I have no recollection of him ever coming to that apartment. Um, I had a I had an experience a couple years ago. I was visiting New York City, and I had a bunch of time to kill, so I got on Tinder just to kill some time. And I matched with this girl right away. And immediately she's like, "Okay, let's go to dinner. We're going to go to this place. I'm going to make a reservation." And I'm just thinking, "Oh my God, wow, this is moving so fast. I love it." And I get to dinner, and I'm asking her like the get to know you questions. And then I asked her, I said, "So where are you from?" And she looked at me kind of upset, and she was like, "Why are you asking me where I'm from? You know me. You like you know my parents. You've like I lived
It
with
wasn't
you."
your first date.
No, she had known me. She had lived with me. She interned at the same company that I'd worked at years ago, and apparently we knew each other really well. I had no recollection of her. So there was some brain damage in the whole experience. Like
Is that confirmed?
I just confirmed it.
Well, I mean, like, did you get a brain scan
No,
or
no.
this is like your lived truth you feel?
It's
Yeah,
just lived stuff. I'm really not into like hanging out in hospitals or doctors or all that kind of
I hear
stuff.
that. Yeah.
I have no interest in being in a medical environment. Um, but yeah, it's just lived truth. I mean, it's, so this girl, she lived with me for 3 months. She was best friends with my girlfriend at that time. We had interned together, and I have like a book that, it's just it's a book, like a picture book, right? She's in there, like she's on like every other page, like she was around. how I don't remember her is hilarious. So I spent the week with her, and she like basically told me all these stories of things we'd done together and blah blah blah. And so I kind of like rebuilt the memories, but they're not my memories. They're sort of just like rebuilt pieces.
Like new ones. Yeah. This has me curious as to like like who came back, like you left your body, you traveled to all these different places, like into your DNA, through your ancestry, into the cosmos, spending time on a spaceship with aliens. And it makes me wonder, like, did you just come back as you were, or maybe something else
The
came
way
back with you?
the way I see it is every day we grow a little bit, right? Every day there's some personal development that's happening. I just went through an eternity of personal development and then came back into this body here. And it's not like someone different came back. It's just I came back. I mean, literally, I mean, a part I left out is when I was going through my DNA in my body, I was going through every decision I'd made in my life and what I wanted to continue doing and what I wanted to discontinue doing. So there was just a lot of, I mean, it was like a whole lifetime. It was like 40 years of therapy all at once,
And I'm also imagining you came back with some new knowledge and understanding of like the cosmos and like other energies, beings, and dimensions from having like
Yeah.
literally firsthand
Yeah.
experienced that.
Well, when I first came back, I pretty much meditated. I was meditating a few hours a day when I first came back. It was the only thing that made sense. Like just interacting with the world was kind of weird. So I just
Mm-hmm.
sit there and meditate and just, I don't know how you put it, just receive. There's just like it's like turning on a radio and just you get a channel and you just listen. And in those meditations, books came to me and I bought like hundreds of books, all kinds of very esoteric stuff, and learned a lot. On my website, I used to have a whole reading list of books, and people would ask me, they're like, "Have you read all these?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, not just read once, like poured through them and meditated on like every little thought in the book. But yeah, for years I tried to make sense of the whole thing. So the death experience was followed by 4 years of study, and then I went to the Himalayas and had a very profound experience just in prayer there. And I asked God, I said, okay, so now what? Like, I want to know you. I want to know you one on one. And I heard the voice say, go to the Amazon. So being in the Himalayas and hearing go to the Amazon felt like it wasn't what I was expecting to hear. So yeah, so then I went and stayed with the Honey Queen.
Is that when I met you, or
Yeah.
is that your other? Okay.
Yeah.
One quick thing before we dive a bit into that. I'm imagining like this call to read all these books. I'm wondering if it was in some way helping you to understand what happened out there in your out of body experience. Like, did you learn more about what was going on there by
Oh yeah.
studying these things?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like I think the first book that came through was Drunlava Melchizedek's book, The Mayan Ouroboros, and it just talks about the grand cosmic cycles of Earth and the rise of the feminine energy in the planet, and you know really it got into the nuts and the bolts of how we're all one. Like we all are a piece of God, and we're all you know, that voice in your head, you know, when you do something right or wrong, and there's that little voice that, you know, that's God. And we all have the exact same voice in the back of our head,
Mm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously we have our soul, but then beyond our soul, there's God. We're all like flashlights, and we have these batteries inside of us. We never get to see these batteries, but this divine battery is what's powering us and illuminating us and giving us this life force. So that's a really good book. There's a really good book called Palladian Perspectives on Human Evolution.
Okay, I was hoping you get to the alien part.
Yeah, I mean we're we're aliens, man. You know, I forgot what book it was, but there's this book all about how like the Anunnaki or whatever, they like came and did.
I'm familiar with that mythology. Yeah.
Yeah, they basically came and did science experiments on the life forms here to see what would make a suitable DNA match to create like an Anunnaki slash Earthling thing. And they did some experiments and DNA things on monkeys, and created our modern human meat suit.
I mean, that makes the most sense for what we are and how we navigate this planet in comparison to everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean we're this very high consciousness being that has this suit that's made out of the stuff of Earth, so we can breathe air and drink water and be at home on this planet, you know?
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it was the Pleiadians that you were interacting with in that spaceship?
You know, I don't know what race it was. Like, just looking at you, I can't tell what country your ancestors are from either, you know?
Fair enough.
You
Yeah.
know? It's
Yeah, because
just,
we have like our interpretations of what Pleiadians look like, but it's hard to
yeah.
tell what's true and what's not.
I did get some stuff like, okay, so basically I had been a Lyrian, and I was part of this team that colonized the Pleiades. So the Pleiadians weren't originally Pleiadians; they were originally Lyrans.
I haven't heard
And
that one before.
yeah, so I was part of that group that colonized the Pleiades, and that eventually became the Pleiadians. And then, yeah, it's just a bunch of. I did a lot of deep meditation and thought on this stuff, but eventually, where I got to was that it doesn't matter for now. Like, none of that stuff like helps me in my day to day, other than just it being kind of cool. So a lot of that stuff, I just let that information go, because it's not like you know that stuff and then someone gives you a private jet and you can, you know, live a life of complete joy and freedom, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, what it helps me with is like the core tenet I see in most spiritual practices and traditions is like, know thyself. And yes, in the end, like, you know, we're some kind of God mote of consciousness incarnate. And for me right now, my deepest interest is exploring like my Scandinavian heritage on my patrilineal side and like Old Norse folk magic. And now I'm like, ooh, I wonder which strand of alien DNA, like, you know, they were populated with. Maybe there's some latent aspect of myself I've yet to discover. And I know in time, if it's meant for me to contend with or to engage with, like it'll show up. But yeah, I mean, I do have this really deep curiosity around the origin of things insofar as we can understand them, you know, in these meat suits.
Yeah. I guess for me, I just kind of exhausted a lot of that stuff. And then I got really interested in how can I be here on Earth in the happiest, most harmonious way.
Can't argue with that.
So that's been my current exploration.
Yeah. All right, let's turn our attention towards the Amazon story for a bit. And so, just so y'all know, this is where I met Rahul. And I know I've spoken about this story quite a bit in my own videos and other podcasts where I had my huge awakening and unearthing of so much trauma and massive like cosmic downloads. And hearing this story from Rahul here, this origin story before I met him there, is helping me understand my experience of him there. Because he was just radiating and beaming with joy the whole time. And like, I'm just going through it like night after night. And I'm like, it's this guy. Wow. And it was a real like anchor to be around you. It was so supportive for my energy to just like
Wow.
be near your smile and your light for sure. That's something I remember. There are a lot of people there, like hundreds of us, and there are a handful of people that like really just stuck here. And like, you're definitely one of them.
Wow. Cool. Yeah, because I've been trying to understand this whole concept of like the importance of just being happy and how helpful that is, not just to myself, but to the whole collective field. I'm like, okay.
And that experience was very different for you there than your one in Miami, I take it.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember the first 2 nights. Um, so we had the 5-day boat ride, and then as soon as we got there, they dropped us into a ceremony.
Right.
And I was under the impression we were supposed to get that yellow fever vaccine. So I went and got this yellow fever vaccine. And the first night of ceremony, the medicine was just pulling it out of me. I was watching it go into all the little nooks and crannies in my body where that vaccine was and pulling it out. And I was purging so much. And there were these like glowing alien gummy bear creatures like going in and like unweaving stuff and unwinding stuff and pulling things out. And then the first night of ceremony, I was in that one of those little those little toilet sheds they made.
Oh, I remember those. All right. I had experience in one of those for sure.
Yeah, so I basically moved into one of those toilets for the first night of the ceremony. And I was so bummed because I wanted to hear the chanting and everything, but I was just like in that little room with the little light and all the bugs and just so much stuff coming out of me. And the next night was more of that. And then finally I was able to actually like participate in the ceremonies. And there was a very clear message: don't take any more vaccines.
I remember there like being a suggestion around that, but my recollection is that it wasn't mandatory. I'm glad that I didn't do it.
Yeah,
But
I wish I hadn't done it. But then yeah, I had like a conversation with like a 12-foot tall moth creature. I remember I was sitting in the ceremony, I was sitting there meditating, and then I saw all these owls start to fly in around me. And as they would get closer to me, they would implode and just like turn into like a ball of feathers and then just drop to the ground. And I'm looking at all these like spheres of feathers all around me. What is this about? And somehow I knew to take the feathers and like stitch them together into something like a giant paper airplane. And I threw it and hopped onto it and flew up to the moon. And then on top of the moon, I had this conversation with this 12-foot tall um, moth. It was just this giant moth with these like clicky things in its face, and it was telling me that I was silk. And I was like, silk? What does that even mean?
silk or silt?
Silk, like
Okay.
the fiber.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long I was in this experience, but then, after talking to this guy, I opened my eyes in real life, and there was silk, like silk fibers all over my face. And I like, grabbed them and like balled it up and made like a little ball of silk. I was like, did that come off my face? Did I just make silk?
Does someone come by and like bless you with some silk? That's
I don't know
wild.
what I don't know what it was, but then either the next night or another night in ceremony, some more of that silk stuff came. So I don't know what was going on in the jungle, but there was some interesting stuff.
And it's still up there with one of my most powerful experiences. Like, and I just love hearing how other people have such different experiences of similar medicines in similar spaces. Like that was a breakthrough visionary experience for me because that night under the full moon is when I, encountered the cosmic serpent and grandmother ayahuasca and saw the spirits of the ancestors dancing around the fire. And I had some other visions before that. There was one other moment that was like really potent when, they tell you to sit up straight in the beginning as the medicine's coming on because it's like it's better to like be in that posture with your spine stacked. And I was having a tough night, but I'm like, all right, let me just try this out. Sitting in this camping chair, and I'm just feeling a lot of pain in my body. And I start to just slowly stack vertebra over vertebra, and I'm feeling like more energy coming as I do it. And then when I get all the way seated up, there was this vision that came into my mind's eye of like a glowing like Buddha figure or a Jesus figure in the chair, and it's me, and I'm just like, oh, this feels so good. And now I get it. Like, oh, I know why they asked you to do this now, because it lets the light in, it lets the energy in. So that was a takeaway for sure. Yeah, that was a memory. But that night under the full moon was easily the most powerful of the nights. Yeah, I want you to tell that bit about the rain because I forgot about that when we talked
Oh
about it
yeah.
earlier.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first night they had us outside, a little bit of rain started to come, and I watched the pages. They like were chanting up to the clouds and going like I don't know exactly what they were saying, but the same pattern of their voice was moving the clouds. Like there were little chunks of cloud. I was watching them move in the shape of the pattern. Uh, and they just cleared the clouds away from right over the fire where we were sitting. But it was raining just 10 feet away from us. And I could see them moving the cloud.
And what you mean by that is like you saw them interacting with the clouds. Did you see like their connection to them? Like, or like, what were you actually experiencing?
It seemed like they were using sound to literally manipulate the molecules of the water. And my eyes were open. Like I was totally,
Yeah.
totally present. And I think a lot of people think like when you're drinking ayahuasca, you're kind of like drunk or inebriated or something, but it's the opposite. You're
You see more.
so present. You're
Mm-hmm.
so turned on, and you're so it's like hyper real. It's super vivid.
I mean, it reminds me of the book The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby, who was an anthropologist who went to study indigenous, and his fascination led him to stay with them for a time. And he posited this theory after like traveling all around the world and experiencing it in many different places. And this theory around DNA, which you've already brought up, which is very, very front and center in a lot of ayahuasca stories and experiences. And he's like, I think one of the things that ayahuasca does, it lets us see like DNA because it's in all things. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
this quote unquote junk DNA is not that. Maybe it's activating that. And in doing that within us, we see it all around us.
Yeah, I mean, I've had many DNA visual experiences for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we covered quite a bit. And unless there's anything else that's really bubbling up that you want to have listeners, viewers hear, we could wrap it up. Like that's wow.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say if you have an opportunity to try these kind of medicines, go for it. Don't be afraid. It's I think it's a profound it's a it's I think to have the karma where you're in a life where you can experience this kind of healing is really
Truly.
special. I've cried many tears of joy in many ceremonies, thinking just feeling how blessed I am in this life to experience this. Because like,
Mhm.
we've all had lives as like royalty or whatever, like something that you think might be cool. But I wouldn't trade my life with Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or anyone like that I mean, like for anything. Like to have had these experiences in this life, it's like such a sacred blessing to be able to go into the entirety of who you are and experience yourself so deeply And I know a lot of people are afraid of these kinds of experiences or whatever, but I would just say go for it. Just go for it.
It truly is an exciting time to be alive, I agree. And if you've been fruitarian for years, might want to bulk up your myelin sheath a bit before going in for your first ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Rahul, thank you so much for bringing these profound and rich stories to us. I was wrapped the entire time. Like, what a blessing to have you here and to share these stories. This is precisely the sort of transmission and gift that I hope people can receive and give them something to contemplate and to open their mind to greater possibilities of life in service and in pursuit of happiness above all.
Yee-hoo!
Yee-hoo.